But it enrages me to see young officers and deputies who are subject to being arrested and put through hell from a legal system that is causing them emotional and financial strain, all for laying their lives on the line and doing their job. Welcome back to Facts Over Feelings, brought to you by Support Our Shields, where we cut through the noise, ignore the outrage mobs, and stick to what actually matters, the truth. And today we're diving into the ongoing case of former Decatur police officer Mac Marquette, a man who did his job, followed department policy, defended his life, and now he's fighting for his freedom. Let's talk about what the propaganda media want, the facts that were already addressed in the trial, and the legal realities surrounding officer-involved shootings. Let's walk through it. Number one, the repossession was legal. Officers were there as a part of a lawful vehicle repossession, not some random call, not a no-knock raid, and not an ambush. Two, Steve Perkins was armed. Not allegedly, not maybe. He had a pistol. Not just that, it was equipped with a tactical light. This was not someone answering the door to say, hello. 3. Alabama law supports self-defense. Under Alabama statute 13A-3-23, officers, just like civilians, have the right to defend themselves if they believe they are facing deadly threat. Self-defense is not suspended just because you wear a badge. 4. The U.S. Supreme Court has already spoken. In Graham versus Connor, the Supreme Court ruled that the reasonableness of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, not with the 20/20 vision of hindsight. Translation: you don't get to second guess a split-second life or death decision from the safety of a courtroom days, weeks, or months later. Sorry, snowflakes. I knew you wouldn't like that one. 5. The departments cleared him. An internal investigation by the Decatur Police Department found no policy violations in the shooting death of Steve Perkins. None. The investigation into the incident was turned over to the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, which is a standard practice for all officer-involved shootings in the state of Alabama. The ALEA ruled the shooting to be justified under Alabama law. ALEA then gave their investigation to the district attorney's office, which was later presented in front of a grand jury. And with the negative influence on social media and the other local woke news outlets, the grand jury, along with the DA, indicted Mac on murder charges. 6. He was required to be there. Decatur Police Policy 302.1, implemented by then Chief Nate Allen, required all officers to be on the scene during the repossession. That means Officer Marquette wasn't just there randomly. And that shouldn't be a mystery for anyone who has an education beyond the 7th grade. Don't let emotional narratives rewrite the facts, because the con artists of the community knew this, but they wanted to paint a false picture to sway public opinion. You see, they needed you emotional before you were informed. So when the truth came out, nobody cared, because this case was never about truth. It was about narrative control, because when the truth doesn't fit their narrative, they don't change the agenda. They changed the truth. This method was used by Ben Crump nearly 15 years ago in the Trayvon Martin hoax. And these slimy lawyers and greasy preachers and woke community activists have been using the devil's playbook ever since. I have plenty of firsthand knowledge because I designed and managed the Florida Stand Your Ground website for then State Senator Chris Smith. So to see what was said in private versus what was said in public press conferences was literally mind-blowing. I saw the danger of repeating lies, and that's exactly how propaganda works. Not with facts, but with feelings. That's emotional programming. BLM didn't rise on truth. BLM rose on trauma and targeted emotional marketing. So let's keep it real. This case is being used by race baiters and pulpit poverty pimps to continue to train blacks in America to see everything through a racial lens. If it feels like it's racist, then it is. If you feel like Mac is guilty, then he is. And when the facts prove he's innocent, then they feel like the system failed. And of course, it must be deconstructed and burned down because it's a tool of white supremacy. That's not justice, people. That's mental manipulation. And who benefits? Not the neighborhoods being destroyed, and definitely not the communities that are being divided. The people who benefited are the ones who wanted power, fame, votes, and money. And that explains what the district attorney and the others that you locals know all too well are doing in this case. But it enrages me to see young officers and deputies who are subject to being arrested and put through hell from a legal system that is causing them emotional and financial strain, all for laying their lives on the line and doing their job. Meanwhile, these cabals of cowards and dens of demons make backroom deals to further their political aspirations and career goals. You clowns disgust me. Good times make weak men, and weak men make hard times. Never forget that. Now let's zoom out, because this case doesn't just affect Officer Marquette. It affects every peace officer in Alabama. In May, Governor Kay Ivey signed HB 202 into law, a significant step forward in protecting Alabama's peace officers. It expands immunity for police accused in use of force cases. Here's why this matters. It rewrites Alabama's police immunity law for both civil and criminal cases, giving officers clearer guidelines and legal reassurances before they are thrust into the courtroom. More importantly, HB 202 establishes pretrial immunity hearings to occur within 45 days of a request and for a judicial ruling on immunity within 45 days after the hearing. This means officers don't have to wait months or years in legal jeopardy before knowing whether they are protected. The law also adds detailed definitions to help courts determine early on whether an officer's use of force was justified within their discretionary authority and constitutional rights. I love it. It's setting stronger, more predictable standards for how Alabama recognizes and protects lawful split-second decisions by police officers, protecting them while they're protecting us. And that's why during National Police Week, I was on Capitol Hill with the Police Officers Defense Coalition, meeting with lawmakers and their staff to advocate for legislation that could have protected Officer Marquette. Two pieces of legislation in particular that can protect thousands of officers just like him. The Qualified Immunity Act. This bill restores reasonable legal protections for officers who act in good faith while doing their job. And it stops frivolous lawsuits from ruining lives over split-second decisions. And the Police Officer Self-Defense Protection Act. This legislation makes it clear officers don't lose their right to defend themselves just because they're wearing a badge and a uniform. When lives are on the line, they shouldn't have to wait to be shot at before they can act. I met with senators and representatives to make sure they know the truth. We either give our peacekeepers the tools and protections they need, or we abandon them to mob justice. We don't let firefighters burn, and we shouldn't leave cops out to dry. And so here's the truth. Officer Mac Marquette followed the law, followed his training, and protected himself from an armed man. And now he's fighting for his freedom. Not because what he did, but because of what it looks like on social media. At Facts Over Feelings, We stand with law enforcement, and we stand for the truth, no matter how unpopular that might be. Back up Mac, back the blue, and as always, stick to the facts, not the feelings. We cannot keep letting these people lead our communities and lie right to our faces. While taking zero accountability, they weaponize Black death, they monetize Black trauma as an entry point to hijack an entire generation's mind, all for clicks, all for cash, and all for control. Stand up, speak out. So that's a wrap for this edition of Facts Over Feelings, brought to you by Support Our Shields. If you've been redeemed by the King of Kings, and if you love this nation and the freedom that it brings, then I'm your brother, no matter your color. But remember this, life isn't fair, but God is just. Be blessed.